The HX Collective explores the human experience through three main channels of life: work, relationships, and self. With raw, authentic conversations, the podcast investigates how challenges can become powerful teachers, leading to personal growth and deeper connections. Rooted in humanity-centered design, each episode reflects a commitment to doing good and doing well, featuring diverse voices and generational perspectives. Expect gripping stories of struggle and success, with thought-provoking discussions and concrete tools and tactics that encourage you to rethink your relationship with distress, helping you to establish your full human experience. This is the HX Collective channel.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the next episode of the HX Collective podcast, where my guest and I come together in our united mission to elevate human flourishing. Today, we have a special conversation. It's our second opportunity to hear from Amy Wellock Staggs and Rick Wellock of the Wellock Group. We hosted in our first season. Amy and Rick have a fantastic business that is focused on leadership transformation, helping human beings find the best version of themselves, really in every aspect of their lives, including work, relationships, and with themselves. Today, though, it's going to be a unique conversation because while we'll talk about things like leadership development and human flourishing, today we're going to have a more personal conversation. We're going to hear the story of a father and daughter doing business together. We're going to talk about what it means to prepare an organization for succession planning and how to do this with great love, with great commitment, and with great excellence. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Rick and Amy. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us in this next round of conversations that's really deeply personal. So hello.
Hello, Deb. Thank you so much for having us back. And we're very grateful and feel privileged to be able to share stories that hopefully create an accurate picture of our relationship and curiosity for others, I hope, and connection for those who also have parent-child businesses.
Absolutely. Rick, I'm so happy that you wanted to do this because I know so much of the vision of the Wellock Group and really creating the content, the methodology, the resources. I know how special it is for you to be able to do this with Amy. And before we dig into the conversation, I'm hoping both of you all can reintroduce yourself. I want folks to have a sense, again, of what the Wellock Group does. As our listeners are often wanting to figure out, how would I follow up or connect with guests? So can you give us a little bit of context as to who you all are in the context of your business? And then we're going to move into a more personal conversation. So, Amy, do you want to start? And then, Rick, I'll invite you to layer in. So first, Amy.
Thank you. Well, who we are and what we do is and has been evolving. And I think that's an important crux to acknowledge. So we often start by describing ourselves as executive coaches, and that's the posture position that we take and is the most connected relationship. But then we also act as thinking partners and diagnostic advisors. And in Rick's case, he moves into an elder role. And I do more individual coaching and development work with not just individual sponsors that we work with, but with their executive leadership teams and their support teams. So it's culture work, but we always start at the heart with the person who has the most influence and buy-in. And we do the oak tree work, the homework, which we'll get into at some point.
This has been a journey for you as you've worked in so many different capacities. What is at the heart when you think about what you and Amy are creating, the Wellock Group? What would you add to how Amy describes that? And by the way, I love that idea. I'm picturing an executive coach, but also like a co-pilot and being able to do it all. But Rick, what would you say and to add to the description?
Well, Amy's named it, particularly our domains. However, as you know, relationships are the primary factor results. Results. And so everything we do is around relationship or cohesion, connection. Sounds soft, but it's actually very rigorous. One person gets things done, two people make, three people create a foundation like a three-legged stool to build on for the future. Four people create an alliance, a four-legged oak table. And if you add the fifth person, you have a movement. So we're really about movement. We're really about helping people enter a transition, go through that transition.
That's powerful. I love the idea of relationship being the through line, and it's really I'm just so eager to know. And what's so fun about this conversation, and what I want our listeners to know, we've never had this discussion before, so I'm going to be learning right along with our audience because I've never asked you like, what is it like to work together? Like I really, I know both of you in your expert roles for our audience. Rick and Amy are coaches in my life, so as somebody who does coaching, I receive coaching from the work at the Wellock Group. But and what is it like to work with your dad?
At this point, at 44 years old, again, it's all relative to where we are and where we've been. It's genuinely, it's a joy. And I'm very aware of the privilege that it is to still work with my dad and to work with my dad in a way where we both choose to show up and be open together and open-minded, and we can still challenge each other. So I have a lot of friends and a lot of people that I love who have different semi-work relationships with their parents, and I recognize that this is not the norm. There's often, I think typically, a lot of either unhealed or undealt with or unrecognized stuff that even if folks try to make, the business and the nature of the work the focus of their togetherness, that stuff still gets in the way. We reckon with our stuff now daily for the sake of doing the best to our ability of keeping a clean slate so that we can bring all of ourselves to bear. And that is pretty radical and very, very special. So I have growing admiration for my dad, not just as the man I work with and learn from, but as I try to see him through the lens of the folks that he elders and folks that maybe feel like they're his acolytes. He has a lot of room that he holds and carries people in. So there's a lot of regard and warmth. And I feel very, very, very special and very lucky to be his daughter. And that I'm very grateful that he encourages me and challenges me and also stays open to build things with me.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's so true. And one of my favorite things about Rick is you're right, the construct of the elderly and the acolytes. And he has a whole language. And like we're talking about him, like he's not sitting right here next to us. He's got this whole language.
He can handle it.
These warlock mechanisms, he will come up with these phrases. Like he just did it a second ago when he was going from this sort of metaphor, a person alone, and then you've got the two, and then you've got the three-legged stool and the four-legged. It's such a power, and you add the fifth, and you've got a movement. And Rick, that's so classic. Boy, Amy's describing that I too am wondering, well, what is it like to hear? What's it like to work with Amy? What is it like to hear her sort of describe who you are to her, in this context?
Something else, Deb. It really is. When Amy was born, I watched her literally come out, and the awesomeness of that, the sheer awe of it, and immediately got scared because I saw her head, and I thought it was her body, and I thought, oh no, she's got hair all over her body. I'm going to raise a monkey. A monkey. I've got a monkey for a dog.
Oh my goodness.
But in many ways,
You went right into
the
acceptance,
monkey's
though. Oh,
there. My daughter's extraordinary. Who and what you see is who and what you get. So you
that I
got
haven't heard.
attention to who and what you're looking at, and how you go
Yeah.
really about raising them. And the biggest challenge I've had, and I'm terrible with questions, you know that, but is raising is really allowing and being with Amy as she is truly who she is, and that's as recently as this morning we talked. And I I could go on,
Yeah.
but probably need to stop. What it is, it's awesome. We have a wonderful reciprocal relationship, and we bang and we clang. We bang and we clang, and we make a mess and we clean up the mess. But it wasn't all that way. I, like many parents, want the best for their child, but it's what I want for Amy. So I'm getting probably into too many different themes here, but I'm honored and I'm blessed when I hear that. It builds me up and it become enthusiastic. And in my 79th year, enthusiasm, man, is a real quality that you want to embrace when you go. You know what I'm saying? So I'm up right now, hearing that.
I do that. I do get it. I love that. It's so fun. First of all, I love that your dad continues to surprise you. That's fun.
Yeah.
Even in the moment.
Every day. There is no norm. Yeah.
Well, thinking about the nature of the work, and when was it, that you knew that this kind of executive coaching, and give me a little bit more, the background, because again, the nature of what you do, you could be doing in a lot of different capacities. So sort of when was it that you sensed that I want to step in and do this work specifically in the context of really what is a family business?
Thank you for the reminder of the the history is the context. So I'll fill a little bit of that in. So I knew that I wanted to be in fill in the blank relations, and I initially thought that was artist relations because I was naturally creative. I was miscast growing up as a performer when what I really enjoy doing is connecting with people. And I'll use my type A personality. That's just my, I think, natural effervescence that comes out now and again to get the connection with someone and then listen and then draw out something that I recognized early on was therapeutic. So I started doing that in high school with theater folks. So I was like, okay, it's probably artists. I created an arts management program in college in order to find what I thought was the answer in the community. That was a start, but it wasn't it. I worked in film, I worked in the music industry, and then I worked in the fine arts industry because I thought it's the creative nature. This is what I first thought. It's the relationship cohesion and connection piece. I just wrote that down that Rick said earlier, and that really was it. I was so attracted to that opening up and that trust that would occur when you really would get with someone. And I associated that openness with confidence in outward expression and creativity. So I thought artists. And I recognized when I was finally in the third part, the visual arts part, when I was on a curatorial staff, and just the relationship with my dad had changed and matured as he was walking with me as I was moving through my career at that point. And I was dissatisfied. I wasn't in a place where I was with people in a way where I could positively influence them and then step back.
Yeah.
So he began to just fold me in by asking me to look at things. That was my experience and my memory. So he introduced me to a way of looking at relationships and the work that he was doing through the connection points that I was already making, and he would affirm them. And then I went through some assessment tools that we now use in our work to help solidify, give me some language understanding. This goes beyond DISC and strength finders. We did even more in-depth assessments around stories, capturing what I enjoyed doing and did well. And I am now very much living in my sweet spot, so long as it can breathe, right? I'm not going to be going to an office every day and working with the same 5 people. There's going to be seasons of working with people and necessary impact and periods of that, openings and closings. And Rick, as I'll refer to him sometimes just for the sake of keeping that relationship clean at times, he he saw that I was getting that and formally invited me into it like about 7 or 8 years ago when we formally created the firm, the Wellock Group. And it was just off to the races.
Love that.
Long answer, but I hope you got what you.
I think it's good though, because the things I'm drawing from this is, first of all, I'm listening to you as the professional that I know you are, and the arc of your work, how it's informed by this sort of artist and creative sort of origin. And yet you nailed it when you said relationship, connection, cohesion.
Yeah.
Define that as a through line to then transfer into the nature of how you're expressing the gifts of artistry and creativity. Wow, it makes so much sense. And
Yes.
I'm also listening to what you're saying through the lens of a father seeing and observing a daughter who is not yet in the container, in the context in which thrivance, in which wholeness, in which fullness can be received. And what, in classic Rick fashion, and Rick, I watch how you do this. Like, this wasn't a formal job interview. It's like it's that gentle invitation into, come check out what I'm working on. Let me invite your insight. And then let me expose you to some of the things that I do with my clients. And so as you think about that space, you have something else to add that I missed, Amy?
He would then say, "Now what do you see?"
Oh, I know. And that's always
So that was the thing too, was the witness, and then an invitation that affirmed that my perspective mattered and had value. It wasn't conventional, and that I was drawn to an iterative process.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just adding that in. Yeah.
Well, and witness is a big piece of what you all do at the Wellock Group, and it's what you activate in your clients. And so, Rick, as you're hearing and you describe that space and journey, I'd love to get this side from your vantage point when you're observing her in the context or in an environment and wanting to draw her in, but not in a way that was performative or pressuring. Tell your part of that experience.
I said it earlier, who and what you see is who and what you get. So really pay attention to who and what you're looking at and how you go about what you really want. Intentionally have them memorize and repeat. Remember who you are and who you belong to. And you will always know how to be and what to do. How to be and do. And there's a wonderful proverb that says, raise up a child in the way they will go, and they will not depart from it. They are old. And that's classically thought about in terms of the character, conscience, and conduct. Raise that child up and shape them, of course. Okay. Instruct them. But underneath that, the real language says, raise them up as they are. Raise them up as they are. She's always been, this isn't new. When I traveled, when she was very, very young, traveled during the week in the beginning of my business, I had assignments. I get in home late Friday night, and then one of my assignments that we agreed upon is I helped Amy read, clean, and organize their room. And remember, clean and organized. I put that in quotes. People define that differently. And so we got all wrapped around the axle about cleaning the room. The instructions were clear. The agreement was in place. Thumbs up. And I would go away and come up, and it looked like Sears or Walmart blew up. But my wife, Jody, who is very wise, and we banged and clanged enough that we know that we we serve as eyes and ears and thinking partners. She said, Rick, why don't you go sit on the floor while she cleans her room? So I asked her to do that. And the most miraculous thing happened. This stuff was spread out, and I was anticipating order. What I wasn't anticipating was architecture and choreography. She took her 8 dolls, positioned them around the room, set them, then stood by them to see what they were seeing, and then organized the room according to how each of the 8 dolls saw it. So if you wanted to see the order of the room, you had to look through the eyes of the dolls. And she moved with people and businesses. So the first responsibility is take responsibility for myself and learn that I'm the one that has to stay ahead in my own growth of Amy. I had to wake up. She went into adolescence. I had to move more into adulthood, which means I had to face my own crap and compost it. And I've been doing that my whole life, okay? So the beauty is she's made for this. And by God's sovereign hand, she's about the business she's designed to do and doing it well. And that gives me tremendous freedom to release everything and then transition at 79 into the best stage of my growth, where I can really invest in people and do deep organizational and executive development, maturation, and growth and change.
Okay, so there's something that I picked up on that, again, we haven't had this discussion before, but it is really inspiring when I think about people who may have parents that are listening and parents that are family business or the nature of in the season of life, Rick, that's kindred to where you are, and that sense that you're in the season of life when you're prepared and enjoying the best part of your work. And what a joy it would be to see the fruits and the talents of your offspring, your daughter, and to be able to invite her in a lot of ways that creates more capacity for you to do what you love and enjoy the most. And I hadn't really thought about that through the lens of the parent, the patriarch or the matriarch of a company, that by inviting a child in and by bringing successors in, if you will, that it actually is a gift to yourself to get to shift and do what we really love to do most. Am I getting that right?
You're getting it absolutely. But the key here is I have to take radical personal responsibility for myself, Deb, and then radical acceptance and allowing Amy to be Amy, and then develop the trust base of banging and clanging again. So there's honesty and acknowledging my own desire for approval from my daughter, and then learning to make and keep commitments. Those are our 4 pillars in our work. So can I maintain my own commitment to her, to our relationship, and to our distinct parts of work? Now this is kind of at a high level, but this takes. If you watch me work, it's all right now. It's in the here and now. So we're not talking about things. We're engaged in co-creating and doing something right now.
I'm going to turn this to validate. So what I'm hearing Rick say, that perhaps a piece of the dynamic is that you're not still focused on what the future is going to be, that you miss the here and now, that actually the dynamic of succession is really occurring in the co-creation in the present. And I think that's something that may get missed, because I do think in family businesses and when parents work with their children, there's so much on what's going to be the structure of the future that we miss the co-creating in the present. So I'd love to hear, how does that dynamic occur real time for you, as the protege, as the one who's, stepping into this? What's that like for you?
If you deepen the present moment through the connection and the coherence, if you deepen the present moment The future is always clear and present in the here and now. You only have right now to work with. If you cultivate this, the future grows. And it reflects our own maturity, our own maturation. So it all happens right here, right now. The future is already here. The Wellock who what it'll become is now shaped by you in this moment, and the three of us about this.
Yeah.
There couldn't be anything more lovely or exciting. I might even grow my hair back. I get so excited.
I gotcha. Okay, that's great. So, I love for your response, and I think there's so many practical takeaways for people who may be listening. Even if you're not in a father-daughter dynamic, if you're in a leader protege or a leader successor, there's a lot to be said here. What's that dynamic called for you? To be in the present and to think about the succession in the future of the Wellock Group, but not in an abstract, where we go on mission, vision, the future. It's like, no, what are we co-creating right now and today? What's that like?
I'd love to say that it's like that arriving at a place where all we have is the future, or is the present as the present, and that the future is the present, as Rick said. That's not some woo-woo stuff we came up with that's an easy place to land that keeps us from being responsible and committed. We've been shaped by getting in our own way a lot, by attempting to build out a future that doesn't have the appropriate undergirding. Okay. So we have a resilience through mucking through and mucking up.
Yeah.
That is a big part of this. So learning that all that we have is right now, right? As far as where we have command and where we have possibility. That's what I'm learning as a co-owner, partner, protege, and, daughter, is because my anxiety personally, I get wrapped around the axle in worrying sometimes about things that truly are out of my control. But I recognize if I do the work that we're imparting to our clients and ask myself, what focus do I really have that I can work with? It all comes back to right now. So you ask what it's like. It's a different level of security and safety and sound faith than I've ever had. And that's only been in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And that for me that's become home. So my faith is in, and it's been learning this through watching Rick and through working with Rick, and also for reasons that may remain a mystery. I'm his father's daughter, and I'm wired, gratefully, because it causes me to slow down, keeps the pace like down in first gear at times, to just work with what is in the present. And you're actually able to see more.
Yeah.
It doesn't keep you from imagining. It doesn't keep you at all from being creative.
No.
But it simply makes you more connected to the real resources, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes tremendous sense. And I think what I'm gathering, and again, the nature of family business is the container in which we're dialoguing around this. I think the practicalities, though, if you are a leader, I work with a lot of senior partners in law firms and in professional services firms. And one of the biggest barriers to making the transition into retirement or to wind down a practice is to how to make room for those next generations, for those successors. And I think what I'm taking away, and I'm hoping if any of those folks are listening, is that dealing with the present, not to get so oriented to a timeline, or it's 5 years, or it's a whatever. It's creating the capacity where you can invite people into your orbit, but also leave room for them to play to their unique strengths and to bring something to the here and now. So it's not a over there kind of thing. It's a here in the moment. And I think that's a powerful way of even helping leaders think through how to think about business transitions or how to think about succession, maybe a little more.
And with that you just opened up something that's really crucial here, and that is the other piece of, yeah, there's living in the moment, and we can continually do that in a way that like strings things along. Paired with that, equally and equally as important, being present, but also being really truly honest about what is the dynamic around control,
Mm,
and what is the dynamic in the relationship around what am I holding on to.
yeah.
And how important is that really? Right? So when we get to, if we're talking about succession, right, which is, it's not a one step, okay, I'm jumping out of the pot, I'm stepping out of the game. Rick and I work with a number of family businesses, and we run into this dynamic 99% of the time, where there is desire to release and to walk away and to do less, but there is, and the motivations and the roots are different, but there's fear, or there's always a certain level of risk in letting go. So that's why we reckon again with the present. We reframe, okay, let's be honest, this is where we are. What would it look like for you to frame out your energy and your effort and your commitment to just what makes sense for what you have to offer right now? And practice letting go pieces on a very practical level. In our firm's case, letting things go to me, letting things go to our assistant and our other colleagues, or shifting the dynamic if we're not quite ready to let go.
Yeah.
Sharing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. And and what is so cool though is when we talk about the letting go doesn't mean letting go to leave. It's like letting go and staying. Because Rick,
He's not retiring.
no, exactly. I think that's the other piece is that sometimes again the binary of letting go so that I can step out in a way and be now the business is like left and I don't have a role. But look, when you hear and you describe that, I can see a lot of how you have to let go of certain things, but how do you stay present, or how do you invent something now? What is the work for you to do? And I that's where I can see where like we were connecting with this. Perhaps you can share your observations as you're hearing and you describe the dynamic.
Yeah, it is that. I think we're in the operative word here is what our listeners are experiencing are dynamics. They're dynamics, but they're rooted in some foundational, solid facts and practices and disciplines. We're always in the midst of coming up against something which we'll call a threshold. This is our public threshold right now to share who we are with others in our relationship. Boom. Okay. That goes through a transition. It goes through a process, and basically you end up reinventing yourself, and you have to revitalize yourself, and then you have to reinvest yourself, which is how I think about it. That goes on all the time. Relationships, people, businesses are alive. Like Frankenstein, it's alive. You're dealing with things that are alive. Amy and I are dedicated to, and you use this phrase, I think it's right out of Texas, eat your own dog food. Eat your own dog food. You can't reproduce what you don't possess, but you will reproduce what you do possess. So it's all practicing. It's all about practicing. Deb, we are not a closed system. We have a coach and therapist that oversees our dynamic. We have a third person. Amy's come up with 4 buckets. This might be useful. I mean, if you shared the 4 buckets that we operate within, because boundaries have to be clear. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Staying in my lane. Is this helpful? Am I being clear?
Yeah. So I'd love to hear it. So before I want to hear the 4 buckets, and then I want to shift to really get some advice from you all, particularly as if people are listening, like what would you do same or different? But what you're saying, Rick, and I think this is important for people And really, I love it. I straddle both of you. So I am much older than Amy, but I'm not yet in the season of my life as Rick. So I sort of miss in between. And what I'm imagining and what I'm experiencing is that in the letting go, it's not a void, it's one coming up into the space of the business dynamic so that there's still that sense of contribution. It's just different. It's not a abandonment, it is a recreation and recreating from the bone. It's generative to let go and then to create. And I'm thinking about, again, senior leaders or parents who are handing off to the generation two, is that it's not about the abandonment. It is about the new dynamic of work that can be done in the space and in the relationship. But for purposes of like concreteness, because I love that there's a framework that might be repurposable by people who could be listening. What are the 4 buckets?
Before we get that, I just want to respond to what you said.
Okay, please.
Right. So what I'm encountering and learning actively about, from our client work, that surprise, surprise, it mirrors directly in our relationship too, and to what you just described as well, is it does sometimes maybe initially feel like abandonment or a void, right? So being honest is really essential. What am I feeling? Okay, that doesn't mean that that's what it is, and it doesn't mean that it's damning, and it doesn't mean, right? It's not a simple pill that I swallow and then, oh, I have space now. We recognize what it feels like, but it is sometimes a mourning process. It is sometimes like grief.
Yeah.
Not always, but that is an important thing for folks to hold and consider. In letting things go, there is often, even if you're not fully stepping away, there may be a grief period, and that is okay. But you don't stay stuck.
You don't.
And the grief doesn't live with you in the same way, because in its place, if you are open to it, there is spaciousness. There is room for your own thriving and your own flourishing in a way that is most appropriate to who you are and where you are now.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And you don't know what that's going to look like unless you go through the process of, okay, it's not appropriate for me to be in this level up to my eyeballs anymore. I'm going to step back so that it's just up to my ankle, and I am going to trust and release.
Yeah.
Right? There's a process to get there. And then recognizing the spaciousness. And it is, again, it's iterative. It takes time. What to then do with the spaciousness. So just wanted to add that part. And now on to the buckets. I highly recommend an accountability partner or someone who you will allow, and this is to anyone who has the parent-child dynamic or the succession piece, someone you will allow to speak authoritatively and have some accountability to in your life. And for us, that is a coach and a therapist who has a ton of experience in our case, what works for us, family system dynamics work.
Yes.
That helps us give shape and identity to what's alive and happening with us. So for us, we ended up with the buckets that we work in. And what we do is sometimes we'll say them explicitly. Sometimes it's just known. I think to get things started, I was the one who chose to make them explicit. Dad, this is a dad-daughter conversation, or there's a dad-daughter that is needed, right? Right? As in, like, I need my daddy.
Yeah.
I want my daddy's ear right now, okay? There's a partner co-owner piece that is the business piece, right? And that is more like, if we're talking about balcony work, that's several balconies up and it requires some perspective shifting. So we've talked about the dimensions and the boundaries, as you put it there. There is the grandpa and daughter who is a single mom dynamic too, which is that may sound similar to the dad-daughter, but it's even more personal nitty gritty around what's going to work and what doesn't. And it's part of why we need to be an alive organism, because this relationship is so important. This bucket is so important. And then we are thought partners together. And that language, so that language will shift a little bit. I mean, that's our co-working space and our co-creating space. But we think and we bounce and we process, and we both are each other's like place where we can intellectually like, yeah, be golden retrievers. And then and then from there, within that space, talk about how we're going to be deployed as it comes to the client work.
Yeah.
And we help each other see.
Right.
So those are the main spaces that we operate within to keep things healthy.
Well, first of all, this is opening up a desire. I want to take another step, and I want to look at how we can continue to recognize that, because I think what you've just outlined for me in this moment is really a dynamic in all family systems. You don't have to be in business together in order to receive that benefit. And so I'm hoping that parents who are listening recognize the container and what is required of us to let go to create space, so that the dynamic or the buckets can be explicit or implicit. But the idea of there is the parent child, where that mommy daddy like intimacy is required. There is the partnering of things, whatever the enterprise is, whether the enterprise is a business in this case, or the enterprise might be how we manage a family property in succession.
Yeah.
So that business dynamic. I love the elder dynamic of seeing your parent through the lens of that second next generation. So generation 3 is the grandparent dynamic with you and then your offspring. And then I love that sense of thought partner in for deployment. As we wrap today, I would love to get on closing advice. If people are in this space, what would you be giving them if people are in a family business or even contemplating a family business? What counsel would you give that would benefit from the learnings that you've already shared so graciously with us? So, Amy, from your vantage point, closing thoughts or advice that you would offer anyone who may be listening and thinking about this for themselves, through the lens perhaps of the child coming in. And then I'm going to give you final word as we wrap for today. But Amy, first you.
I would encourage the child or the younger in the dynamic to have a practice. It can be there's so many parts to us as humans, but for me, it is a spiritual practice that contributes to me being increasingly well-defined and separately defined, right? And that allows me to more accurately take my own inventory. I don't get it right all the time, and fall into my reptilian brain at times, but I can return to that practice. And there are relationships that sustain that, including the therapeutic one that I mentioned.
Yeah.
So,
right. Take it. So really that sense of, if you're the younger listening to this dynamic, you've got to be really clear about your own stuff and having a sense of inventory and a sense of recognition of who you are in the dynamic of that relationship, but also in standalone. It's powerful.
And with that, the boundaries that emerge from that work, and they'll be better informed if you're actively and continually doing that work, because the boundaries are alive and they'll kind of shift.
Okay. And Rick, from you, what advice would you give folks who maybe are in the parent role, seeking to make transitions to bring children in or to create that succession? Closing thoughts for you.
Well, I'll offer 3 things. First of all, is the way we frame our work, which is, what's the story we're telling? What's the game what are we really up to here? What's the direction we're heading? That's a governance or a leadership set of questions that I ask and Amy asks about us and with our clients, but with ourselves. Second is, know your lane and stay in your lane. Don't overreach. We work a lot in family businesses where there's responsibility but no authority, or too much authority and responsibility and no accountability. These accountability, responsibility, and commitment. So know your lane, stay in your lane. And I'll just affirm what Amy said. Habits, practices are where we attend, and relationships. The quality of relationships is key. And what about relationships? Attend the means, the integrity of the means. And what I mean by that is, how are we going about doing what we're doing? How are we doing this? Not just what are we doing? You can have vision, the values, you can have mission, all that stuff, but it's the end of the day. What are the virtues? What are we practicing with ourselves and one another, and how are we practicing it?
That's wonderful. Well, I can say and attest as a person who's inside of your dynamic as a co-collaborator and as a client, I think the through line for all of this is love. And so I can't thank you enough for spending the time with us, and can't wait for our listeners to continue to be informed and inspired by the great work of the Wellock Group. Until next time.
Thanks for being here. If today's conversation sparked something in you, we hope you'll carry it forward with curiosity, compassion, and courage. Subscribe to the show, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. Until next time, keep exploring what it means to be fully human.